Welcome to the Learning Adda. The Old Man and the Stranger, a story of humanity. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived an old man named Mr. Carter. He was known to be kind and gentle, always willing to help others. Mr. Carter lived alone in a tiny house at the edge of the village. His wife had passed away many years ago, and his children had moved to the city for work. Despite his loneliness, Mr. Carter never complained. He found joy in small things, like tending to his garden and feeding the birds. One cold winter evening, as the wind howled outside, Mr. Carter heard a soft knock on his door. Surprised, he got up from his chair and slowly made his way to the door. When he opened it, he saw a stranger standing there. The man was shivering, and his clothes were torn and dirty. "Good evening, sir," the stranger said, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I have nowhere to go. Could you please give me some shelter for the night?" Mr. Carter looked at the man with kind eyes and said, "Come in, come in. You must be freezing out there." The stranger stepped inside, and Mr. Carter quickly closed the door behind him to keep out the cold. He led the man to a chair by the fire and handed him a blanket. "Thank you, sir," the stranger said, wrapping the blanket around himself. "I'm truly grateful. I haven't eaten in days, and I've been wandering from place to place, looking for someone kind enough to help me." Mr. Carter nodded and went into the kitchen. He prepared a simple meal of bread, soup, and tea. When he brought the food to the stranger, the man's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you crying?" Mr. Carter asked gently. "It's just that no one has shown me this much kindness in a long time," the stranger replied. "I had lost hope that there were still good people in this world." Mr. Carter smiled and said, "There's always hope, my friend. Sometimes it's hard to see, but it's there. We must help each other, especially in times of need." The stranger ate the food slowly, savoring every bite. After he finished, Mr. Carter showed him to a small room where he could sleep. The bed was old, but it was warm and comfortable. The stranger thanked Mr. Carter again before lying down to rest. The next morning, the stranger woke up early and found Mr. Carter already awake, sitting at the table with a cup of tea. "Good morning," Mr. Carter said with a smile. "I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you," the stranger replied. "I feel much better now. You have been so kind to me, but I must ask you, why? Why did you help a stranger like me when you didn't have to?" Mr. Carter took a sip of his tea and said, "Many years ago, when I was a young man, I found myself in a similar situation. I was lost and hungry, with nowhere to go. A kind family took me in and gave me food and shelter. They didn't ask for anything in return, but their kindness stayed with me. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I would do the same for others." The stranger listened quietly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that Mr. Carter's kindness came from a place of true humanity, a desire to help others without expecting anything in return. I don't have much to give, the stranger said, but I want to repay your kindness in some way. Mr. Carter shook his head. You don't need to repay me. Just remember this moment, and when you find someone in need, offer them the same kindness. That's how we make the world a better place, one good deed at a time. The stranger nodded, understanding the wisdom in Mr. Carter's words. He stayed with Mr. Carter for a few more days, helping him with chores around the house and in the garden. During this time, the two men became friends, sharing stories and laughter. When it was time for the stranger to leave, he thanked Mr. Carter once more. I will never forget your kindness, he said. And I will make sure to pass it on to others. Mr. Carter smiled and waved as the stranger walked away, disappearing into the distance. The old man knew that he had made a difference in someone's life, and that thought filled his heart with warmth. As the years went by, the story of Mr. Carter's kindness spread throughout the village and beyond. People began to help each other more, inspired by the old man's example. The village became known as a place where strangers were welcomed with open arms and where kindness and humanity were valued above all else. And so, the legacy of Mr. Carter lived on, reminding everyone that even the smallest acts of kindness can have a lasting impact on the world. Thank you for the watching.